Hello. Hello, 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 hello.
A strange, pixie-like creature came prancing out. He wiggled, flounced, and twirled his way forward, happy as ever a demon was.
Hey guys, how are y'all today? I have a special guest on the channel. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Hey guys. I am Octoberon, also known as Dash Fletcher, and I was one of the principal voice actors for Drake's Dungeon by Hotcha.
And who did you voice?
So my main roles were I voiced Drake, I voiced Luro, and a couple of the other incidental voices that you hear throughout, like the White Worm. I also did the dude on the table in the very first scene, if
Oh,
anybody's seen the previews.
oh my.
So, yeah, it was rather entertaining being able to basically fuck myself.
Oh my.
Mm.
And I think you did
Um,
tell me that you voiced both Drake and Luro. And I'm not gonna lie, when I was playing the game, it was kind of hard to believe you because they sound so different. I was like, wait, no, he just voiced Luro, right? No, wait, but then you're reaffirming. I'm like, wow, that's some vocal talent right there.
Thank you. It was a little bit rough trying to voice them both at once. So, yeah, we ended up having to split both of the roles completely up because I just could not jump between the two registers in the same
Hmm.
session.
So how'd you get the gig? Like, where did it all start?
It was a post on Hotch's Twitter, I believe, actually, doing the casting call. So I joined the Discord. I went, you know what, screw it. I'm going to shoot my shot, as it were. I sent in a couple of things. I sent in a few trials for Drake. At one point, he did have an Australian accent, but that was very swiftly axed. Um, I sent him my take of Luro, and he said that he started pacing around the room, which was very entertaining. Just listening to it over and over again, and I'm like, okay, I think I've made an impression. But then appended to the whole thing was basically my take on the dude from the start, followed by a 2 minute orgasm reel.
Oh,
And I'm not sure which one got more of his attention, but yeah, it was memorable, I guess.
yeah. So with this game, these characters have been on the internet for years, and
Mm.
reading comics of any kind, you have your own idea of what they sound like. So I'm sure that was very interesting being the voice of Drake, who I don't know when his first comic came out. It came out a while ago. Like it's not a new comic. And
Mm.
especially the voice actor for Deimos, I was like, oh my gosh, how's Deimos gonna sound? Deimos sounded pretty much how I thought he would sound, which was weird. I was like, oh, that's coming to life. Because Deimos has been about around since maybe before I was born. I don't know if before I was born, but he's been around for a long time. So yeah, these characters, for them to go this long without any type of vocals is very interesting. And so, how did it feel to be like the first to be the vocals?
It was pretty intimidating, not gonna lie. Uh, the thought of being able to bring something or somebody as well known in those circles as Drake to life was a bit of a challenge, but I don't know. With Hotch's instruction, it was really invaluable to me to actually capture the voice that not only I thought would appeal to the people that do read his comics and have read since the start, but also one that would stay true to something that he wanted the voice to sound like.
Hmm.
Like giving a character a voice through text is always an interesting thing because especially with the way that certain things are spelled, like he often the word your will be spelled Y-E-R. So just like,
Hmm.
does that mean he has sort of like a more of a southern accent or something like that? It was hard to just glean it from the text what he
Hmm.
wanted, but being able to sit down with him and really like get to grips with him as a character as Hotcha created him really helped inform the voice, and I feel like that came through a lot when the game was finally produced.
How much of the game have you completed the game?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Oh wow.
um, uh, yeah, I was one of the early playtesters,
Oh,
and
okay.
I think when I started doing like the bug reports and things, I think one of
Mhm.
the comments I got from Hotcha was just like, "Wow, how did you get that far that quickly?" I'm like, "Because I didn't stop playing for several hours."
Yeah.
Yeah, no, go on.
Oh yeah. I was saying, yeah, the main gameplay loop of like, I think a lot of people try to compare it to Hades. It's not quite like Hades. It's like a bullet hell. I don't know what you call those games where you're one character and you're in a plane and you're kind of just walking around in circles with all these objects, killing all these monsters. But how'd you like that gameplay loop for this type of plot line?
Well, the thing is that the gameplay loop and the plot line are quite separate. Like,
Mm-hmm.
there's not really much tying one to the other.
Mm-hmm.
Apart from the references that you get through the item descriptions and
Mm-hmm.
the little pictures and things like that that come along with it as well. But yeah, the two of them not being quite as connected sort of makes one a vehicle for the other.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think that makes the game like any worse as
Mm-hmm.
it is. It's just sort of more of a standalone thing. They're
Yeah.
separate experiences, but the experience that you get through playing the game is to be able to control Drake and
Mm.
see kind of the awesome things that he does in his fight scenes. Um, whereas, yeah, the story is yeah, the story is sort of its own separate animal.
Yeah. And the story is a lot. Like that could be a bedtime audiobook because oh my goodness, those chapters are long. Not a bad
Yeah,
thing, but I'm just like, oh my gosh. Yeah, recording footage for it for my impressions, I was like, oh my gosh, there's gonna be like 50 gigabytes of this game in a video file on my computer. Because some people have asked me, they're like, how long do you think the chapters are? I'm like, between 15 minutes to almost an hour, if not an hour. They like that long. I was like, yes, like this is an audiobook. I, I, I wonder how thick the actual book was. If it was like a chapter book, I wonder how thick this book would be. It'd be pretty thick.
I did have the thought of at one point of printing out my script so I could have it in my hands because usually I was just reading off a tablet,
Mm-hmm.
and, But yeah, I looked at the page count. I'm like, I'm pretty sure my work is gonna notice, and if they read through what I've been printing, they're probably not gonna be happy.
Oh no.
Yeah, the detail that Hotcha put into a lot of the world building and developing these characters past what we've already seen them as, particularly Luro, because I'm pretty sure he only appears in one, maybe two comics, and you don't see much of him.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot there. It's very long. It's quite dense. I think by the time we finished recording, it was something like 19 and a half hours of audio to process.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So how long have you been voice acting? What have you voiced in prior to this?
Um, Believe it or not, this was actually my first proper published voice acting gig.
Oh wow.
I did do a lot of theater and various kinds of things in high
Okay.
school and
Yeah.
all the way through university, but it was mostly in-person stuff.
Okay.
I did do a little bit of voice acting when I was a kid
Mm-hmm.
for a game that never unfortunately got
Oh
published, which was
no.
sad. Yeah. It was supposed to be like a learning game for younger
Oh.
children, and yeah, I was supposed to voice this Jack in the Box character that was helping kids read through things, and it was all like, I can jump, I can bounce, I can hide. So I can only imagine what my little voice actor self would think jumping ahead and seeing where my career has brought me.
Like, when did I get nasty?
You know you want it.
Speaking of nasty, was it like awkward to voice any of the, I mean, you were there, any of the scenes where y'all were doing stuff?
Oh no.
Mm-hmm.
No. That was sort of the great thing with being able to work with Hotcha directly, because most of
Mm-hmm.
these, almost all of the sessions that we did live.
Oh.
So he would jump in with little notes and things like that. Um, and it was most of the time it was just really funny because when it comes down to it, a lot of this dirty talk stuff is very absurd, or at least can
Hmm.
be. So, yeah, no, the awkwardness went out the window very quickly. In fact, it evolved into a couple moments of, okay, we kind of need to break for today because I can't concentrate on doing anything at the moment. I need to go and take care of myself, and then maybe we can come back.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just me recording a lot of stuff in here when I'm playing games and people do stuff. If you watch my videos, I'm just kind of like, oh, they are having a freak off, and I can't show that to you guys. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, he's giving him a spanking, you know. And then there'll be people like around me and they're like, we don't care what you're doing. Why are you being so weird? I'm like, because they're being nasty on the computer. So I appreciate that y'all, you know, could be more adult than I can by just saying, oh yeah, this yeah, we're just voicing. It's getting funny.
Well, when you're in that sort of situation, especially with somebody who's very well aware of what's going on because they wrote the source material,
Mm,
it's kind of the easiest way to, especially if you're looking at it from an artistic perspective, from a director's perspective, to see it in terms of the delivery and in terms of the performance, as opposed to being in terms of the content.
mm-hmm.
Because if you do get too stuck on the content, then yeah, you get sidetracked pretty quickly.
Mm-hmm. I just like that line you had. A harem. That
Harem! Oh, nothing's more tacky than a harem. Have a little class.
when I heard that, I damn near fell out of my chair. I was like, harem? Like that is so bougie. like it, like it's so in character because just him pronouncing it that way just shows how much he just thinks that's disgusting. Just like harem.
Oh yeah.
Oh.
Oh
Just
my
like,
god.
ew.
Finding ways to do that in Laura's delivery was so much fun. Just take one word and make sure that it's the one word that defines what he says. It's like every time he says the word bodyguard, you have to love it. Every time he very pretentiously calls his own place labyrinth instead of labyrinth.
Oh yeah, that was another one.
And when
The labyrinth. I'm
la-
like, oh my gosh.
labyrinth.
I was like, he is so
Really,
extra.
I had to tread that line between being so extra and just completely insufferable.
Oh my gosh. So this might be a mean question, but which character was more fun to voice? Hacha, not Hacha, Drake or Luro? Which one's more fun?
Oh man, well, okay, the thing about Drake is that he was a lot of fun. Like I cannot deny that he was a lot of fun to voice. Um, but he's so laconic. He
Mm-hmm.
talks very little, but when he does, he gets real fired up about stuff. And oh, just that kind of the burning fire that you have to have behind everything. Sometimes it's just so glorious and amazing. And other times it's just goddamn frustrating all the time. And the growling does get really harsh with the
Mm-hmm.
voice every now and then.
Yeah.
But I have to say, like, you can't go past Luro. He's just so much fun. And I found myself just sort of writhing in ecstasy in my booth. Oh, I love it so much. Ah.
It's
When I
kind of,
first
oh, go
started
ahead.
developing Luro's voice, sorry, when I first started developing Luro's voice, his three main components are sort of equal parts Tim Curry, Bayonetta,
Oh,
and Hedonism Bot from Futurama.
oh my gosh.
So I had to give him a little bit of edge, a little bit of danger, but I also needed just that touch of Jumby, the chocolate icing. Oh, yeah. So, so yeah, finding the different parts of his nature where I could bring each little little part of it up was just, it was so much fun to explore. Drake's a little bit more one note, so the
Mm-hmm.
variation of Luro was just way more fun.
That's kind of normally how it is. Like, I remember back in, I say this as if I was alive, but people would talk about voicing He-Man versus voicing Skeletor. They're like, you know, Skeletor is more fun because he's like, you muscle bound idiot. Whereas He-Man's like, okay, Skeletor, time to go in the pit. You know, it's just, it's more fun to be loose and a villain as opposed to, you know, just being the straightforward hero.
Yeah, you've got to love a good villain, especially when you have that sort of moment of Joker-esque over the top. Like, I mean, when I think back to another big influence on him was actually the Grumble from Our Real Monsters.
Oh my gosh. I love that character. Because
He's so amazing.
yeah.
Just the people like the Grumble and him from the Powerpuff Girls
yes.
as well. I know it kind of plays into that sort of stereotype of the effeminate male villain being, you know, somehow twisted and devious because he has this feminine nature. But at the same time, that makes for really, really good characters, being able to like play on that concept of what you'd expect from a man, and then being like, no, I'm going to do whatever the fuck I want, and you can't tell me a damn thing about it.
Yeah, now that you bring up the Grumble, I can definitely see it.
But if he fails, if he's snapped and broken, if my warrior stud cannot be woken.
And it's funny how those sort of real stereotypical kind of things that you see from early gaming. I remember that you mentioned in your Q&A that so many of these early games are so stuck on that, you know, muscly, beefy Conan the Barbarian sort of looking dude in his underwear being like, right, we'll destroy everything.
Yeah.
That has sort of faded from that sort of consciousness there, but it's definitely been inserted back into the video games.
Yeah.
At least in the world that you and I are kind of in.
Yeah. Yeah, if you look up the Commodore Amiga and just look through the games, it's like, okay, why are all these men half naked? I mean, I'm not complaining. I'm just like, wow, these men half naked. And some of them completely naked.
And even if it's a few pixels high, you can still sneak a penis into a game.
Yeah, what was that? It's a game my friend loves. Oh my gosh, he's gonna be so mad at me because I can't remember it. Dante's Inferno with Satan and his giant penis.
Oh yeah. Oh man. That was a good game.
Yeah. I remember when I first saw it, I got scared. I was like, oh my God. Because I thought it was going to be used as a weapon. I was like, is he going to have to dodge that? But thankfully, no, he didn't. Because that was too big. I don't know.
No, we need more of that in the video games. We need some like giant Dark Souls penis bosses.
Well, there were some penis. No, okay. No, they weren't penis monsters. They were our weapon to use against the monsters in Drake's Dungeon, where we had the giant penises that will fall from the sky.
Yes. It was one of my favorite moments when I first discovered that. And I'm just like, as soon as I discovered the fusion for that, they come out and they're massive and glowing. If you haven't played the game, that is one that you need to go straight towards because it is just wrecks the battlefield with flying dildos. And I mean, what more could you want in a game?
It was so funny. Every time I was playing it and like some penises would fall out, I'm like, okay, I can't use this power up because I have to record this for YouTube, and YouTube is going to shut my channel down if they see flying penises all over the screen. So who would you say are your, because you've listed off some actors and actresses as well as characters, who would you say really contributed to just you pursuing voice acting?
Oh man, it's kind of hard to narrow them down. Again, one of my heroes is definitely Charlie Adler, who was voiced a lot of the early Nickelodeon stuff and a little bit of Cartoon Network as well.
Yeah.
my personal favorites of like because Rocko's Modern Life was a really big part
Oh,
of my growing up.
that's such a good show.
Yeah.
I got it on DVD.
um. Oh yes, I used to have it in DVD, but I had to leave it in the States, which is sad.
No.
Um. I know you got to be very selective when you have to whittle your entire life down to 2 suitcases and a backpack.
Oh, true.
But Rocko's Modern Life was a really big one for me. So Carlos Alazraqui, the first time I ever encountered Tom Kenny as well, who is now the voice of SpongeBob. Um, Charlie Adler, who was the Big Heads, especially when I found out that he was both of the Big Heads, both Ed and Bev, and how he can go from Ed's like big-headed bravado and kind of Bev into this glorious kind of Rocco, come over and mow my lawn sometime. I'm like, the fact that you can go from like two so completely disparate characters in the same show and not have anybody know, that was one of the things that went, yeah, these people are amazing, the way that what they do. On top of that, obviously Christine Cavanaugh and actually Peter Kenny, no relation to Tom Kenny, is an audiobook narrator who I got into fairly recently because he narrates one of my favorite book series ever, which is The Culture by Eden M. Banks. Highly recommend. But his narration just really brings those stories to life. And because he does the voice of all the characters, he manages to make them distinct in such a way that you instantly know who's speaking. Like you don't have to go back to the memory, oh wait, who was that? Or what's all this? Because there's a lot of big, long, complicated names in that series, but he just manages to it's just perfect. Big props to Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy for also being a big part of my my early experience with voice acting. So the radio plays were a big part of my childhood. So they definitely inspired me to go, hey, hang on a second. You don't need a screen. You can tell a story entirely through sound. So, yeah.
How have you gone about trying to find other gigs in this field since working on Drake's Dungeon?
Well, it's been a little tricky, understandably at the moment, because with the rise of AI and things like that, it's becoming a lot harder for, excuse me, it's becoming a lot harder for artists and actors, particularly voice actors, to find work in that sort of realm, which is a bit sad because while there have been a lot of really interesting stuff coming out with the processing of AI into speech, but there's a big difference between getting a real person to voice these kinds of things and getting a robot to do it.
Yeah.
But thankfully, there have still been a lot of artists, particularly on Twitter and Blue Sky, that are still putting out casting calls. So I've dropped my name in a few times there, but no bites yet.
Yeah.
I did just sign up to be a narrator on LibriVox, though, so you never know. Might be in your ears again with some literature.
Ooh, nice. I actually watched a video. It's some YouTuber. She talked about how she ended up doing audiobooks on Amazon. I was like, oh, that's interesting. Yeah, with AI, AI is such a tricky and divisive topic because I don't think inherently by itself it's necessarily a bad thing. I think me and one of my friends were having a conversation. He was like, I feel like it should either be like used as a placeholder, or if you're just trying to round something out, like maybe you can't find someone to make music for a game, you just have an AI band camp or something like that. But to type in a prompt, have it spit something out at you half-assedly, because I've worked with a lot of AI tools before because I'm like, what is this? Because I like to know what stuff does before I like critique it. To make something good, I think you have to type in a very detailed prompt, like put in a bunch of negatives. And then after that, you probably need to go into Photoshop and like clean some stuff up. And a lot of people just don't do that. If they're doing an image, they just have it spit it. Or they train the AI to act like someone else. I think it was actually Hacha that said someone was training AI to do his artwork, which,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it was a pretty sorry state of affairs there.
Mhm.
When you can see some of these, because I mean, sometimes people will post these things online with the prompts that they used, and you can
Mhm.
see, oh, you're trying to imitate this style, you're trying to imitate this
Mhm.
style, and while I don't think that AI in and of itself as a tool is inherently bad,
Mhm.
when these models are trained unethically,
Mhm.
i.e., taking art from people who haven't consented to
Yeah.
uh,
Mhm.
having these things incorporated into the model,
Mhm.
then it really is just sort of, I hate to say it, but wholesale thievery. I
Mhm.
mean,
It
you can
is.
imitate someone's style if you know, want to sketch one of their
Mhm.
characters or, you know, draw it like them, then sure, emulation is a thing. But
Mhm.
when you're just letting the computer do the work, saying this looks like this person's art, and
Mhm.
have it pass off as theirs as well,
Yeah.
it's it's terrible for
Mhm.
the artists themselves, because it sort of
Yes.
depreciates them as a brand, but also
Mhm.
to the people that are appreciating this art, because you got to admit it has a lot less soul than
Mhm.
something that somebody has poured a lot of effort, energy, and time into. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think it's a good tool,
Mhm.
but I think we need to be firstly aware of the things that are being used to train these tools,
Mhm.
and whether those things have been sourced ethically or not, and also aware of the fact that it does have a displacing effect on
Mhm.
the people who've been traditionally, you know, in the roles of providing these things like art and
Mhm.
voice. And not to sound too much like the machines are going to take our jobs,
Yeah.
but um, when you can get a machine to do something better and more
Mhm.
efficiently, sure, absolutely go for it. When you can use a tool to make your own efforts better, sure, absolutely. But if you're using a machine to make what is an inferior product,
Mhm.
when you could have had the the energy, the drive, the heart of the person that's producing it
Mhm.
in there as well, go with the human every time.
So, it's sad, but I think the best thing people can do is like what we both been saying, use it as a tool, but when you have the chance to use a human, please go with the human. Yeah.
Yes. Please, we need the work. We really
Hmm.
do.
Hacha wasn't the only artist working on this game. Were you able to chat with any of the other artists in this game?
Unfortunately, no. I didn't get to do pretty much it. Like, I didn't speak to Patrick Fillion at all,
Hmm.
um, which is really unfortunate because
Hmm.
I have been a Class Comics fan for quite some time.
Oh, me
But
too.
I very, very briefly chatted to Diz Dudes a little
Hmm.
bit, but that was mostly because I was also auditioning for the voice of Derek,
Hmm.
as if I didn't have enough to do already.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because Derek's been one of my favorites of Diz Dudes. Like Diz Dudes is just his whole art style, his vibe.
Hmm.
I've seen a lot of his like drawing guides and tutorials and stuff, and tried to
Hmm.
emulate the way that he approaches like musculature and things. But
Hmm.
no, unfortunately, I didn't get to work with him as well.
Oh.
But if he ever does some voicing for his characters in the future, well, I've got some reels to send.
Yeah. I feel like all these artists should try to dabble in like either visual novels or things like this. I've been talking to some other artists in that community and they said they would like to, they would just need some help. They can't do it by
Mm,
themselves.
yeah, it's always the way. Like there's so much that goes into developing a game, but even just a visual novel, like there's a whole aspect of
Hmm.
how you actually interact with it, which is very different from seeing their art online, because you're basically taking a click, having a look, and
Hmm.
doing whatever else you may do
Hmm.
with it at the time at
Hmm.
your discretion. Mhm. But yeah, when it comes to developing games, the community is getting a lot bigger now,
Hmm.
because a lot of these things are becoming much more accessible,
Yes.
especially with things like visual code being able to,
Hmm.
you know, break down that sort of language barrier that people have with writing these games.
Hmm.
But because the community is growing and there's so much support, you can see that. I mean, you don't have to go it alone anymore. You
Yeah.
certainly can, and there are some people that are doing so, like Cusack, who's developing Knights of the Last
Oh
Stand.
yeah.
He's got people helping him, but he
Mm-hmm.
is mostly a one man team,
Yeah.
and he's a machine.
Mm-hmm.
So being able to cover all the bases, it's good to have a jack of all trades. But yeah, there's always going to be somebody out there who wants to help.
Mm-hmm.
Just put out the call, and people are going to be like, I'll do
Yeah.
it. Come here, pick me. I'll do it. And that also goes for me. That's actually me putting up my hand. Hey, anybody who does want to collaborate at some point, I'll do anything.
Yeah. Ah,
I'll do 3D modeling. I'll do painting. I'll do
ooh.
music. I'll do your voices. But yeah, I think we just really need to come together and
Mm-hmm.
make more of these things
Yeah.
because queer representation in games has not
Mm-hmm.
been a thing for a long time.
Yep. So speaking of Cusack, how's it been? Because I know on his Discord, I think, what are you listed as on his Discord? Like an
I'm
assistant?
a moderator for well, I'm a moderator for the Discord. I set up the server
Mm-hmm.
originally. He's taken it and he's done much more with it than I did. But yeah, I've put my 2 cents in about certain designs and things in the past as well. But I mean, he's perfectly capable of doing this stuff
Mm-hmm.
himself because I mean, you can look at the results and see that this is going to be a good game.
Oh, yes. I'm so excited. And then the booties was jiggling and the boobies was jiggling.
Mm. It's been far too long that we haven't had decent titty tickle physics for men
Mm-hmm.
in games.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they've been doing it since Tekken and Dead
Mm-hmm.
or Alive. And
Yep.
I remember when I played Soul Calibur. I think it's Taki. She's wearing like this
Mm-hmm.
skin tight red ninja suit kind of thing. Every time she spun around with those daggers, it was just like whoa, 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 whoa. I'm just like, why aren't Keelik's titties bouncing like that?
Mm-hmm.
Give me some Zangief jiggle physics. And now people have actually kind of realized that
Mm-hmm.
that's a thing that people want in games. And some people want it a lot more than others
Yeah, because
because it's really fun to watch.
I'm starting to notice, especially with fighting games, and of course, a certain community was upset about this, but it seemed like they started like covering the women up more, and then the men were getting more and more half naked. Because I remember when Tekken 8 first had footage release, and the men are like doing their little fighting poses. I'm like, is his titties jiggling? I think they are. And then their
Mhm.
muscles are like jiggling like little, when you shake your arm and they jiggle. I'm like, they're making the men jiggle. I think Mortal
Got
Kombat
little
was
chicken
another one.
wings.
Uh-huh. I think Mortal Kombat was another one. Everyone was mad that the women had all this battle armor on and none of the men had shirts on. I was like, they don't need shirts. Like, I'm confused. What's the problem? They don't need shirts.
Yeah. I remember when one of the Final Fantasy sort of side games came out. I think it was Brave Exvius. I might be wrong about that
I know
title.
I know which one you're talking
Um,
about. Mm-hmm.
yep. And the early designs showed the character with, like fully covered on the
Mm-hmm.
front, but the side of his outfit was like totally cut out. You could see some
Mm-hmm.
side boob. It went all the way down his thigh. Like you could see it
Mm-hmm.
like right on the edge of his butt. And there was such a ridiculous outcry that they
Mm-hmm.
actually changed the design.
Yes.
And some of the things that people were saying online, it's just like, guys, there's nothing wrong with this. They're actually giving the male characters the same treatment that they've been
Mm-hmm.
giving female characters for the last 20 years.
Yeah.
But no, apparently that's not allowed.
Yeah, I remember that. It was an iPad only. It was only for the iPad. And his whole back was out. And he had like
Mhm.
I can't remember if he had pants on, but he had pants or some shorts on. And his side boobs and stuff was out. And then everyone lost their damn mind. And so they had to like edit the outfit to like give him. I mean, the game is shut down now. The game doesn't even exist anymore. But it's just like, looking back, you're like, was that even really necessary? You could have just been like, I really don't like his outfit. I hope Maybe they have some other outfit I could put him in. But no, not my Final Fantasy. It's like, okay. That was weird. I'm like, Final Fantasy is
I'm sorry,
always.
guys.
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just like, I'm sorry, guys, but if you have it on one side of the so-called divide, you kind of need to allow it on the other one as well, because
Mm-hmm.
there are people that want to see that.
Mm-hmm.
We like our scantily clad video game characters. Why can't we all like, all kinds of scantily clad video game characters if we want to?
Mm-hmm. Like the ones in Drake's Dutch.
Mm.
So what video game voice acting has really like captured you or like, caught your ear?
Ooh, tough. Weirdly enough, the the instance that comes to mind, the instances that always come to mind with me are usually the voice acting that is not actually voice acting.
Mm-hmm.
When it's taken like with random sounds, or like little sound bites and things, like the Banjo Kazooie sort of
Mm-hmm.
characters, where you have
Yeah.
that can convey that sense of character. But also, I've just recently been playing Inscription, and there are no voices in that game except for this
Mm-hmm.
weird, creepy, like bass rumble that comes out of the one other character in the game. And it's weird that you can convey a voice with that sort of thing, or like the tones in something like Undertale as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but in terms of video game voice acting, just the way that things like the scripts for the Mass Effect games
Mm-hmm.
come together always really
Yeah.
impress me, because these characters are always willing to these characters are always able to convey any kind of emotion that reflects your choices and responds to like the actions that you take in the game. um, just recently as well, I've really enjoyed the voice acting in Shadow of Mordor as well.
Mm.
um, they do a pretty good job at capturing the feel of what you would expect these characters to sound like if they were in the game, like in the world of the movies.
Mm-hmm.
Particularly Shelob, she's got a badass voice. Um, Anything that Claudia Black is in, I will play, even if it's only to hear her voice. So when when she showed up in Dragon Age, it was kind of just mind blowing. Like, she's one of my favorite actresses of all time. Um, but yeah. Oh, fuck, there was another one that I was going to bring up as well, but it's completely sorry, that's really embarrassing since I mentioned her earlier in this video. Bayonetta. Like, she's just got one of those voices that you just want to listen to. She's so
Yeah.
much fun. She's so good, but when she gets serious, she gets really fucking serious.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and the little like the little just the little incidental noises are really important as well when it comes to like getting hit or casting a spell or firing something. The little grunts and smacks and hits, they're so important for satisfying gameplay. And both incarnations of Bayonetta, I know I'm probably going to get a lot of flack for possibly only mentioning one, but both voice actresses that have played Bayonetta, I think, have
Mm-hmm.
done an absolutely stellar job.
Yeah.
The English dub, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
the Japanese dub is also fantastic, but unfortunately, I
Mm-hmm.
don't speak fluent Japanese, so I
Yeah.
can't appreciate it quite as much. I also been recently playing the God of War, the new God of War.
Oh yeah.
I want to say remake. It's another remake. The one before
Ragnarok.
Ragnarok.
Oh, the one before.
Yeah,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
not Ragnarok. The one before. I haven't got around to Ragnarok yet. But it took me too long to realize that the voice actor of Kratos was Christopher Judge, and
Mm.
Christopher Judge, another one of my favorite actors from my childhood. He was Tilk in Stargate,
Oh.
and I love his character, and his voice was always so strong and imposing, and he did basically all of his acting through his voice and his eyebrows.
Mm-hmm.
And and um hearing him bring Kratos to life as well, because even though he is also one of those very sort of staunch one note clipped characters,
Mm-hmm.
maybe it's a little bit typecast because Teal'c was very, very much that as well.
Mm-hmm.
But it's amazing to see how much he does with so little. When you have a character that's very reserved and laconic and only chooses to
Mm-hmm.
speak when it's absolutely necessary, and then to be able to just break out that rage when you need it, ugh,
Mm.
I wish I had that kind of, not just depth in the literal depth of his
Mm-hmm.
voice, but the depth of his voice.
Yeah.
It's yeah.
Have you ever thought of
I
streaming
also mm,
games?
maybe. I mean, I do tend to make a lot of really funny noises when I game, especially when I lose a lot, which
Oh no.
happens quite often. Um, um, yeah, I'd thought about it. I'd like to.
Ooh.
Um, I have a lot of ideas at the moment, and I need to seize on one.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. Possibly
Ooh.
could be a fun thing. I'd like to see more cooperative games, especially in the sort of like Bara love game kind of
Oh
genre as
yeah.
well. Even though those are sort of very much in a first player,
Mm-hmm.
self insert kind of thing. Having something a little bit wider, a little bit more cooperative would be really interesting. And actually, might be getting into designing something like that in the future myself, but
Ooh.
that's down the road.
So you've talked about, just voice acting. What would you say, either if they're stage actors or movie or television actors, which of those type of actors or actresses would you say were inspiring?
Oh, inspiring to me. Uh, one that kind of covers all of those bases is probably Stephen Fry.
Mm.
He's a big inspiration to me for a number of reasons, because not only is he just absolutely devastatingly intelligent, like the man is an absolute genius, but he uses that intelligence in his comedy in such a great way that it just it just exudes out of him. He's got this incredible charm, this beautiful delivery, and has been able to use his voice, his physicality, and his experience with being, a gay man that grew up in a fairly repressive time in Britain in the later
Mm.
21st century, sorry, later 20th century, that all of no matter what he does, even if it's completely ridiculous and over the top, there's this grain of honesty to it that's
Mm-hmm.
really really beautiful. Like he's even though like he has this absurdity and ridiculousness, there's always just this touch of vulnerability that is beautiful to me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in terms of like icons, I would have to say that Angelica Houston's a big one for me as well.
Mm.
'Cause she just has this presence and this command over the roles that she plays sometimes, and like not to hammer the Adams Family thing too much because I know she's done a lot more than that. But her Morticia, again, somebody who can basically keep their entire body still and do all of their acting with their eyes. Just, I love her. I love her so much.
Mm.
Frank Welker,
Mm-hmm.
Hank Azaria to some extent. Tress McNeil as well, who
Mm-hmm.
is I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Um, who has done basically all of Matt Groening's stuff. I mean, she's been in
Mm-hmm.
Futurama and The Simpsons and Disenchantment. She's also in Rick and Morty, and she's
Mm-hmm.
one of those voices that, even though and Maurice LaMarche as well, just unbelievably talented. One of those voices that you hear everywhere, and the moment that you hear that voice, it's like I know that person, but I couldn't possibly tell you what she's done because she's done
Mm-hmm.
so much.
Yeah.
And to have that kind of place in what is effectively the state of the art of animation and voice acting today is just like
Mm-hmm.
it's awe-inspiring.
So, what would you say for someone trying to? Because I have some friends, they want to try to start voice acting, you know, it doesn't even have to be like in anime or cartoons or anything, but you know, just voice acting gigs, but they don't know where to start. What would you say for them?
Um, excuse me. I would actually probably say that best thing you could do would be to find a book that you really like
Mm-hmm.
and just try reading it to someone,
Mm-hmm.
because that's pretty much exactly where you're going to find the way that you want your characters to come across. I mean, obviously, you're using somebody else's material to do it,
Mm-hmm.
but you will have a voice for these characters in your head. Sometimes people will have a much stronger one. Sometimes people will, like me, go through a book and have these characters talk in their head,
Mm-hmm.
as opposed to, scanning through, or, speed reading and things like that. I read kind of slowly for that exact reason, is because
Mm-hmm.
I want to see everything play out in my head. So if you can get the practice of finding a story that you engage with, finding characters that you really engage with, and that you can sort of go, I know what you sound like, and I want to sound
Mm-hmm.
like what you sound like.
Yep.
If you can get that across with media that you really love, then you'll find it a lot easier to settle into these characters
Mm-hmm.
later on. And there also is really no difference between doing stage acting or TV acting, as opposed to voice acting. Apart from, well, I mean, you're sitting in a booth reading from a script, and you don't actually have to do anything with your body, but what you do with your body is also really important. So not only do you need to be comfortable, but you need to also have a little bit of room to move around.
Mm-hmm.
When I first started recording for Luro, the space that I was in was absolutely tiny. So we had a bit of a dungeon set up in one of the outbuildings of the house that I used to live in,
Mm.
um, and there was some pretty fun stuff in there. But the room that I was in was a literal cage that was built in the corner. It was probably, I don't know, 3 feet, or a meter for people who think in metric, square. And I just strung up some blankets, chucked it over, started trying to read the lines, and the first thing was, okay, you actually sound like you're talking into a bucket because your sound baffling sucks. But I was also cooped up, hunched over, sort of stuck up like this, reading my script. And when the Luro lines came out, it sounded like he was very uncomfortable. Well, I had no idea what's going on. So expand the space, let yourself breathe, allow yourself to move, and as long as you have, good mic placement, then you can allow yourself to embody these characters. You can
Mm-hmm.
relax into them. They get to move around the space however you want them to. And as they move, as you feel them, as you really, you know, come into their physicality and figure out where they sit and how they drive, even though you're sitting down, you're still going to be able to give a good delivery, because you're not just speaking the character, you're living the character.
Oh wow.
When it comes to these kinds of things, if you really want to embody a character, you got to let that energy out somehow.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you try and get it out through the voice, but especially if you're playing like a conflicted character or somebody who's really frustrated, as soon as that gets into you, then you have to get it out somehow.
Mm-hmm.
So if your character is keeping it bottled up, you have to keep it bottled up. But you can't do that forever. You have
Mm-hmm.
to step away from the mic, step away from the character, or at least have a moment where the character can go and just get it out, and then you can come back and keep going. It's really important not to feel trapped.
Mm-hmm.
The number one thing you don't want to feel is being trapped, not just in your physical space, but also in your character.
Mm-hmm.
That's actually another piece of advice that I will give. One of the very first theatre pieces that I did in university was The Picture of Dorian Gray, and I was Dorian
Ooh.
Gray. Yeah, it was a very interesting experience, mostly because it was 3.5 hours long.
Okay.
And I was on stage for 3 of those hours, basically non-stop, apart from some costume changes. So I didn't get really any time to not be that character. And even in the rehearsals and stuff leading up to it, I remember my director did one thing where um, it's sort of a calming exercise where you know imagining the light of your character filling you up, and you leave yourself behind, you become the character, and it was very immersive. We were there for about an hour and a half, just embodying Dorian as much as I possibly could. And then at the end of that period, he went, "Okay, we're done. Bye."
Oh, wow.
But I didn't get to step back out and have that ritual of, letting myself come back in. So I was actually really shaken, kind of just lost with it. I was sort of half stuck in the role and half not, like really all there. Um, and I think it's a really important thing for people to be able to pick up a character and put it down, and to be
Mm-hmm.
able to step away from these things as well, to sort of abstract your, like, because when you're in the role, you get very invested in the script and the things that your character is saying and doing, but you have to have moments where you remind yourself, okay, that's not me. I'm not doing these things. Especially if you're doing things like in Drake's Dungeon. If you haven't seen the trigger warnings yet, there are some pretty
Mm-hmm.
intense scenes. And having a moment to be away from that character and remind yourself, that's not me, that's not what I
Mm-hmm.
do. This is, a character that I'm playing, and you can remove yourself from it, is a very, very valuable thing for
Mm-hmm.
you being able to portray the character honestly, but also being able to be honest to yourself. So
Yep.
bring yourself into the character, but don't bring the character into
Into you.
yourself if you can avoid
Mm-hmm.
it.
Exactly. So, speaking of characters, I asked you to voice my mascot, Mitch. How did you feel about going about that?
It was really fun. Again, I defaulted to my lighter British accent, but tried not to get too Luro about it, because as much as I talk about not bringing the character into you, he still very much sits in the back of my head every now and then.
Mm-hmm.
But um, yeah, it just really brings me this great thrill when I can help somebody else bring their vision of a character to life and give them a voice of their own.
Yeah.
Because it's a valuable thing in the creative process. So if I'm able to do that accurately and stay true to vision, then it always just gives me a little thrill. So uh, yeah, thank you for
Oh,
letting me do
yeah.
that.
Thank you for voicing him. It was so awesome. I remember I was like, I want Luna in the Deke dub, but a guy. And you were like, oh, okay. I feel like you were like surprised by how simple, like, even every time I get a commission from somebody, they were like, that's all you want? I was like, yes, that's all I want. Just a shirtless man in some underwear, no horns, no glowing eyes, no wings, no feathers, no fur. They're like, oh, okay. Like, they're just like, oh, okay, I guess that's fine. They do that to me at Subway too when I eat at Subway. They're like, you just want meat and cheese on this Subway sandwich? I was like, yeah. They're like, oh, darn it. I'm like, what is your problem? She's like, I was just so ready to put all this stuff on here, and now I'm done. Now I'm bored. I don't have anything else to do now. I was like, oh, all right. I made your job easier.
I, I know what I'm about.
Yeah.
Just go for it.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be complicated to be good.
Yes. But yes, I'm still working on that introductory trailer. I tried to make it so epic. I'm like, oh, I'm so dramatic. Why we got zooming out of the earth? And then I was like, oh, why not? It's just so
It's
silly.
good. It's I mean, you play on the tropes.
Mm-hmm.
You do have to give some people what they expect to see sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. We like to keep it consistent. Like, we don't want to see anyone shooting Easter eggs out their butt or nothing. That'd be kind of weird. Well, I guess he's a rabbit, so that wouldn't be that weird.
I
Huh.
mean, there's a market for that.
Yeah.
There is.
Yeah. So do you
I
have
actually have a couple of those in the next room.
wait, what?
I actually have a couple of those Easter eggs in the next room. So.
Oh, it's funny because I was thinking of like actual Easter eggs. So I was like,
Mm.
oh.
No, these ones are definitely not made of chocolate.
I was just like, oh wait, actual Easter eggs? Because I don't even like actual Easter eggs. So,
Yeah.
do you have any closing statements for everyone?
Oh, geez. Just that I really want to thank everybody that played Drake's Dungeon and came to read the visual novel in any form that they got it, even if it was just, the visual novel / audiobook. It's really great to see people, actually consuming this kind of media and
Mm-hmm.
enjoying it, hopefully. I know it's not for everyone, but
Mm-hmm.
for the people that it brought joy and pleasure to, um, I just, yeah, I want to say thank you. And I
Mm-hmm.
really enjoyed every part of the process. And once again, if anybody is willing to make uh, anything else in this genre, um, or any other genre, I would love to help you bring your vision to life because it deserves it. Doesn't matter what
Mm-hmm.
it is, it deserves it. It deserves a chance.
And I do want everyone to remember that Drake's Dungeon is out on Steam. It was on Gumroad. I believe that Gumroad had the visual novel version. Like it was only the visual novel. It wasn't any of the gameplay, but because Gumroad changed the terms of service, it got taken down. I had a few people asking me, was there just a visual novel version anywhere else? I was like, I haven't been able to find it. I don't know if Hodge just posted it anywhere else. Um, but you can purchase it on Steam. I think Hacha had another game that he was working on. It's on itch.io, but he just kept it
Mm,
as a demo because he ended up working on
mm,
Drake's Dungeon.
yeah, and there may be some uh, projects in that vein down the line, possibly
Mm-hmm.
for a different demographic. Don't quote me on that, but
Mm-hmm.
the things are in the works.
Ooh.
Um, mm,
Oh
but
my. Yeah, gotta keep the lips closed. People take something and run with it. All right. Well, Octoberon, thank you so much for joining the channel today.
it
Maybe,
really was a lot of fun. Thank you so much for
yeah.
this.
Yeah. Maybe one day we could collaborate on a video together. We had to figure out what kind of game we're playing.
Absolutely.
Oh, that'd be so fun.
Oh my god. Yes. At the very least, we need to play something like Lethal Company just so we can laugh at each other's hilarious demise.
Oh gosh. Neither company would scare the shit out of me. Well, not as bad as
That's.
Phasmophobia. Phasmophobia, I'm just like,
Ooh, Phasmophobia or Demonology. That would be a lot of fun.
I think the last time I played Phasmophobia, I walked in the house with somebody and a door closed behind me. I was like, why'd you close the door? They're like, we didn't close the door. I was like, what do you mean? There's only both of us here. And they were like, oh. Then my neck got broke. I was like, oh.
Dun dun dun.
So, do you have any socials you would like to drop for us?
Um, I don't really have much of a social media network
Mm-hmm.
presence, unfortunately, anymore because I got off Twitter because it's awful.
Mm-hmm.
But I am currently on Blue Sky,
Uh-huh.
and I'm at Captain Cockrocket. Obviously not for everyone, but if people are watching this channel, then chances are they
Mm-hmm.
might not have a problem with the kind of content that I post on there.
Yep.
Um, so yes, I will provide a link there because it's hard to
Mm-hmm.
spell because I wasn't thinking about branding when I set it up. Um, but there will be more of me in the future, hopefully, putting up some interesting stuff on possibly YouTube, maybe a different Blue Sky account.
Mm-hmm.
I'm bad at social media, but um, yeah, keep your eyes out. You might be hearing some rather soothing words from me in
Mm-hmm.
a very dirty context coming soon.
Yes. I'm glad you mentioned Blue Sky. I also have a Blue Sky. I don't know if my viewers know what Blue Sky is. It's like Twitter alternative for who is it for? I just know a bunch of gay artists are on there, but I don't know if that's like specifically who it targeted.
well, there's a lot of gay artists. There's a lot of furries.
Yeah, a lot of
But
furries.
it's just basically people who want a social media network without an algorithm and
Yeah,
also without Elon Musk.
exactly. But until next time, guys, we'll see you later.
Bye.